In this episode, we're weaving together the grand sweep of monarchy's history, from the godlike rulers of ancient river valleys to ceremonial figureheads of our modern world, with the intoxicating myths that once made them seem superhuman, like the divine right of kings and the enduring legend of blue blood. And yet, at its heart, this isn't just a timeline of thrones and scepters. It's a call to reclaim the quiet power that history so often buried under crowns. We'll explore how these systems rose to organize chaotic societies, how they cloaked themselves in divine mystery to hold sway, and how revolutions and reason eventually humbled them. But through it all, we'll return to a simple imagined gathering. A city square at dusk where ordinary people come together not to protest, but to remember their inherent worth. Because the true arc of history bends toward equality, reminding us that power has never belonged to the few. It's a birthright we all share. So settle in, take a deep breath, and join me in that square as we begin. We are all born free. After all, no one arrives in this world above another, carrying some invisible mark of superiority. Imagine that city square now, alive with the golden hues of early evening. Office workers loosening their collars after a long day. Artists clutching worn sketchbooks. Parents cradling drowsy children as they weave through the thinning light. There's no anger in the air, no fear-fueled chants or hastily scrawled signs demanding change. Instead, it's a profound, unspoken harmony. As if every heart there has tuned into the same quiet frequency, a gentle nudge from within saying, "It's time to stand a little taller." In this space, we're not rallying to dismantle the world's hierarchies or to cast blame on those who've climbed higher than us. Rather, we're pausing to confront a subtle lesson many of us absorbed along the way, often without even noticing. The habit of tilting our gaze upward, not in awe of sheer humanity, but in our dim sense of our own lesser place. Perhaps it stemmed from the fairy tales of our childhood, filled with benevolent kings and ethereal queens who seemed destined for greatness. Or maybe it was a structure of our schools and societies where we learn to revere titles and applaud achievements and measure value by the glare of spotlights rather than the steady beat of everyday lives. Whatever the source, it left us with this lingering whisper that worth is a rare commodity doled out to a select few at birth. But here in the heart of our square, let's linger and reclaim what we once knew instinctively as children, that every single one of us enters this existence with an equal and unbreakable worth. No jeweled crown can elevate a soul beyond its natural light. No lofty title can render a heart more deserving of respect, and no fleeting fame can make another person more vividly real than you or me. This gathering isn't to challenge anyone else's standing. It's a tender reclamation of our own. We don't require a monarch's nod, a brand's endorsement, or a pedestal's height to hold ourselves upright. Respect flows freely to others without demanding we diminish ourselves in the process. Standing tall in the end isn't about rising above anyone. It's about refusing to settle below. As we walk through life, we're permitted, no, invited to carry our heads level, neither arrogantly higher nor humbly lower, but precisely even with those around us. True personal power doesn't arrive with fanfare or clamor for applause. It emerges softly from within, sparked by a single affirming thought: I matter too. And so, as we embark on this journey through the ages of monarchy, let's remain anchored here in our imagined square, gathered shoulder to shoulder, meeting one another's eyes without deference or disdain. No kings to idolize, no pedestals to envy, just people, each worthy in their equality, ready to rediscover the strength that's always been theirs. To truly grasp why humanity first forged these glittering symbols of rule, we must journey back to the dawn of civilization itself, some 5,000 years before Christ, when the world was a tapestry of scattered tribes grappling with the raw unpredictability of survival. Picture small bands of hunter-gatherers swelling into bustling settlements along fertile riverbanks, where the line between feast and famine blurred with every flood or drought. As these communities grew more complex, demanding shared resources, dispute resolution, and defenses against outsiders, a new form of leadership emerged organically: monarchy, a system where a single figure, often inheriting the role through family lines, stepped forward to impose order on the brink of anarchy. It wasn't born from ambition alone, but from necessity, a collective sigh of relief in the face of mounting pressures. Our story begins in the sun-baked cradle of Mesopotamia around 3,500 BCE in what's now modern Iraq, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers gifted abundance, but also unleashed devastating floods. Here, in thriving city-states like Uruk and Babylon, early kings rose not merely as warriors or administrators, but as intermediaries with the divine. Priests with swords channeling godly will to irrigate fields and avert catastrophe. The fusion of spiritual and secular authority lent their rule an aura of inevitability, a stabilizing force amid the silt and storms. From there, the pattern ripples outward, adapting to each landscape, yet echoing the same core impulse. Along the Nile and in ancient Egypt, starting around 3100 BCE, pharaohs embodied this idea on a cosmic scale. They weren't just leaders, but living gods, incarnations of Horus tasked with uploading Ma'at, the delicate balance of order against chaos. Rulers like Ramses II channeled this mandate into monumental legacies: pyramids piercing the sky, temples etched with eternal decrees that sustained the realm for over 3 millennia, turning potential peril into enduring harmony. In the vast heartlands of China, the concept evolved into the mandate of heaven. By about 2000 BCE, a philosophical contract where emperors claimed celestial endorsement, but only so long as they governed justly. Natural disasters or corruption could revoke this divine lease, ushering in new dynasties like the Shang or Qin in rhythmic cycles of renewal and accountability. Across the Indian subcontinent, monarchy manifested in diverse kingdoms, from the Vedic rulers of antiquity to the expansive Maurya Empire under Ashoka, who transformed from conqueror to enlightened patron of peace, each blending royal duty with cosmic harmony to safeguard sprawling populations. Nor was this phenomenon confined to the East or the Fertile Crescents. It flourished independently also in Africa's ancient realms, where Nubian queens challenged Egyptian thrones, And West African empires like Mali under the fabulously wealthy Mansa Musa, whose pilgrimages flooded markets with gold, wove kinship into the tapestries of trade, tradition, and spiritual guardianship. And in Ethiopia, emperors traced lineages back to biblical kings, embodying a continuity that spanned millennia. Even in the Americas, before European sails dotted the horizon, the Incas, Sapa Inca, descended from the sun god to unify Andean heights, while Maya and Aztec lords intertwined blood rituals with astronomical precision to anchor their worlds. And in Europe's misty forests and tribal strongholds, the seeds took root more ruggedly. Celtic chieftains forged authority through valor and kinship, evolving into the sprawling domains of Frankish kings like Charlemagne, who knit together the frayed remnants of Rome into medieval mosaic. What emerges from this global mosaic is a profound pattern. Monarchies didn't spread as a single invention from some enlightened epicenter, but rather sprouted independently wherever societies scaled beyond the immediate bonds of the village. Justified by threads of religion and raw strength or ancestral custom, they offered not just control, but a shared identity, a narrative of continuity in an unpredictable experience. Yet, as we reflect from our square, these origin tales captivate us still because they mirror our deepest yearnings for protection, purpose, a hero to light the way through uncertainty. The early kings, for all their grandeur, were profoundly human, prone to the same doubts and desires that stir us today. Their perceived exceptionalism was less an innate trait than a story we crafted to endure the wild. And in that realization lies our own quiet empowerment. The greatness they symbolize isn't locked in bloodlines or legends. It's woven into the fabric of every life gathered here, waiting to be acknowledged. And as civilizations deepened and societies stratified, monarchies didn't remain static relics of their cradle days. They adapted, intertwining the social fabrics of their times to weave ever more intricate webs of influence. In medieval Europe, this evolution crystallized through feudalism, a hierarchical exchange born from the era's brutal necessities. Kings granted vast swaths of lands to loyal nobles in return for oaths, military aid, and tribute, who then cascaded these holdings to knights and lords down to the peasants, who are tilling the soil under the promise of shelter and safeguard. This pyramid, fragile yet functional, buffered against the relentless tides of invasion, plague, and famine, positioning the monarch not only as the supreme arbiter, but as the kingdom's unifying heartbeat, a figure whose presence evoked stability in a landscape scarred by uncertainty. And layered atop this structure was the church's indelible endorsement, transforming political might into something transcendent through the doctrine of the divine right of kings. In grand cathedrals, bishops would anoint rulers with sacred oils amid chants and incense, declaring their authority a direct extension of God's will. To defy such a sovereign wasn't mere treason, but a rupture in the divine order itself. This theological scaffolding reached its zenith in the age of absolutism, where figures like England's James I proclaimed kings as gods on earth, wielding a facsimile of heavenly power, while French cleric Jacques Benet Boussat thundered that assaulting the crown equated to assailing the Almighty. Coronations became rituals of cosmic affirmation. Thrones flanked by altars and crosses, embedding the two swords. Spiritual guidance from the clergy, temporal dominion from the crown, into the very marrow of governance. Such convictions justified both the splendor of the royal courts and the shadows of unchecked tyranny, framing obedience as a path to salvation and rebellion as a cosmic folly. And beyond Europe's borders, these dynamics remixed into a vibrant global variations, each reflecting local soils and skies. In Japan, emperors traced the descent from the sun goddess Amaterasu, embodying spiritual eternity even as the shoguns commandeered the reins of daily rule, creating a duality where the throne, it symbolized unassailable heritage amid shifting earthly powers. The Ottoman sultans, blending caliphal piety with imperial conquest, governed a realm stretching from Vienna's gates to Africa's shores. For over 600 centuries, their authority a seamless alloy of faith and force. In West Africa, Mali's empire under Mansa Musa radiated cultural and economic radiance. Its kings' pilgrimages not just acts of devotion, but bridges of prosperity that reshaped distant markets. Ethiopia's Solomonic dynasty, meanwhile, wove biblical lore into a lineage of resilient sovereignty. And across Mesoamerica, Mayan kings deciphered celestial omens to steer their city-states, their rule a delicate dance of astronomy and allegiance. By the Renaissance and into the early modern era, European monarchies centralized further, with dynasties like England's Tudors navigating these tense truces with the emerging parliaments, France's Bourbons dazzling from Versailles' gilded halls, and the Habsburgs sprawling across continents through strategic unions. This era of consolidation fueled global explorations as crowns like Spain's Isabella sponsored voyages that redrew maps and minted colonial fortunes. Yet it also sowed seeds of discords. Nobles chafing at eroded privileges, merchants amassing parallel influence, and whispers of reform stirring in the shadows. Returning to our square under the deepening twilight, we see how these gilded narratives still exert a subtle pull, drawing us toward admiration as a balm for our own ordinary struggles. Royal pageantry or celebrity spectacle offers a fleeting escape, a glimpse of confidence and freedom that whispers of untapped possibilities within reach. If they can ascend, perhaps I can too. There's no shame in such inspiration. It has lifted souls through the ages of hardship, yet when it curdles into comparison, fostering thoughts like, they possess some innate edge I lack, we unwittingly surrender fragments of our own light. The antidote lies in recognizing those we exalt, be they ancient emperors or modern icons, are vessels of the very qualities we seek: purpose, resilience, belonging. And these aren't privileges of pedigree, but seeds that flourish in any soil tended with care. We can honor their paths without bowing from ours, standing firm in the knowledge that the throne of true fulfillment resides not in distant palaces, but in the steady cultivation of our own inner worlds. And woven into this divine tapestry were the fiercely guarded bloodlines, where houses like the Habsburgs and the Bourbons orchestrated marriages within a shrinking circle of elites, twisting family trees into knots in a bid to preserve what they deemed an untainted essence. God's own blueprint, or so the myth insisted. This obsession with pure lineage persisting into the racial pseudoscience of later centuries, underscores a poignant irony. In their quest for elevation, these dynasties often entangled themselves in decline, revealing the fragility beneath the facade. And by the 17th and 18th centuries, the once unassailable edifice of monarchy began to tremble under the weight of enlightenment and upheaval, as fresh philosophies pierced the veil of divine inevitability. Thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau reframed authority not as a heavenly decree, but as a covenant forged by the consent of the governed, a radical pivot from consecration to collaboration that ignited sparks across continents. In England, the execution of Charles I in 1649 marked a visceral rupture. Even as the doomed king invoked his sacred anointing in his final breaths, the axe's fall signaled that no crown could shield against the tide of accountability. And this echo, it reverberated through the American Revolution of 1776, where colonists severed ties with George III to enshrine we the people as sovereign, and crescent in France's 1789's cataclysm, where Louis VIII's guillotine severed not just a head, but the myth of untouchable rule, rippling outward to topple Bourbons and inspire liberations from Latin America's haciendas to Russia's frozen palaces in 1970. In response, surviving monarchies underwent profound metamorphosis, many evolving into constitutional frameworks where rulers retained ceremonial splendor, but ceded governance to elected assemblies and charters. Britain's Windsors, for instance, embody national continuity from Buckingham's balconies, while Sweden, Spain, and Japan orchestrate pageants of tradition that underscore unity without command. Absolute remnants endure in realms like Saudi Arabia and Brunei, where oil wealth and faith fortify hereditary sway. Yet, globally, only about 43 nations still hoist royal banners, often as cultural anchors, drawing tourists to historic sites and fueling economies through the romance of coronations and jubilees. Debates persist, of course, weighing the stabilizing symbolism of thrones against critiques of inherited privilege and fiscal burdens. But these conversations mirror broader quests for identity in an egalitarian age. Lurking within these shifts was the unraveling of blue blood, that evocative Spanish phrase, sangre azul, coined in medieval Castile, where the sunshine nobles flaunted their pale, vein-traced skin as emblematic of untainted lineage, distinguishing them from tanned laborers or intermixed populations of their era. Far from a biological truth, for blood runs red in every vein, it was a potent symbol of status, laced with racial undertones and divine hierarchy. If kings were God's elect, their veins must pulse with a pure, heavenly kiss current. This notion permeated royal intermarriages, breeding not just alliances, but infamous frailties, and lingered as a shadow in the 19th and 20th century ideologies of superiority. Such convictions weren't Europe's monopoly. They echoed worldwide. From Japan's imperial descent from Amaterasu to Africa's sacred kings, mediating ancestral realms, or Mesoamerica's Aztec and Inca lords whose ritual blood sustained the gods' favor. Wherever dominion took root, Myths of exceptional essence followed, sanctifying the few at the expense of the many. And even now, these echoes persist in subtle rituals. The anointing oils at Charles III's 2023 coronation, the casual invocation of royal blood in our stories and screens, reminders of a 5,000-year-old impulse to cloak power in the celestial. Yet, as dawn creeps over our square, history's fractured crowns reveal liberating truth. Authority is not loaned, not owned, and its illusions crumble before the persistent tide of human agency. Pharaohs have turned to dust, emperors to footnotes, but the people, the builders, the bearers, the quiet revolutionaries endure. Their stories, the true chronicle of progress. In the rush of these grand narratives, it's easy to overlook the understated reservoirs of strengths we each possess. Reservoirs shaped from our earliest days when we learned to look upward to parents, teachers, heroes for guidance and growth. That upward gaze serves us well in apprenticeship, fostering learning and humility. But over time, it can subtly erode into a posture of diminishment, where we gauge our value against others' titles, others' triumphs, or the shimmer of their acclaim. The most steadfast measure of worth, however, lies not in external accolades, but in the authenticity of our daily choices. The kindness we extend without expectation, the perseverance we muster in unseen hours, the fairness we champion, even absent of an audience. Authentic leadership, untethered from crowns or stages, manifests in these modest acts. The deep listening that bridges divides, the diligent labor that sustains communities, the principled stand that ripples outward. If we could behold ourselves through the admiring lens we turn toward our icons, we'd recognize the very courage, ingenuity, and compassion we celebrate in them already flicker within our own depths. So today, let's set aside the impulse to contract. Let's approach one another at eye level as companions, neighbors, and equals, free from the distortion of thrones or the hierarchies of heritage. No elevated platforms, no solitary seats of glory, just individuals striving earnestly, extending hands where possible, and lifting the collective tide. In rising to our full stature, we create the space for everyone to do the same, igniting the kind of understated transformation the world perpetually hungers for. We've traversed rivers of time today, from the divine pretensions of god kings to the busted illusions of blue-blooded exceptionalism. Emerging with a clear view of crowns as human constructs, brilliant, flawed, and ultimately eclipsed by the egalitarian light we all carry. Thank you for journeying through these echoes with me. History gains its vitality when shared like this. If any part of this stirred you, pass it along to a friend, leave a review to help it reach more ears, and connect on social media. Tell me, what's one pedestal in your life you're ready to step down from? Keep standing tall, keep questioning boldly, and remember, your story is the one the ages have been waiting for. Take care, and I'll see you soon.